Hi, welcome everyone. It's a beautiful day today, although it's a little cloudy. I would first like to acknowledge um, the custodians of the land. So, the University of Queensland acknowledges the traditional owners and their custodianship of the lands on which we meet. We pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. We recognize their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. Um, we will start off by Professor Heather Zwicker, the Executive Dean, Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences for the University of Queensland, to deliver us the welcome address.
Good morning, everybody. I would like to reiterate the acknowledgement of the traditional owners and pay my respects to elders past and present, and my wish for all of you today, wherever you're situated in this amazing land that always was and always will be Aboriginal land, is that you have an opportunity to learn from the lessons of the traditional owners who continue such important connection to country, to spirit, and to possibility. UQ is absolutely delighted to be the host of the 2021 Research for Development Impact Conference and the Student Forum taking place today. I want to issue a hello to all of you who are participating from bedrooms or living rooms, or unless you live in Melbourne, where ironically you might be participating from a cafe for the first time. Congratulations, Melbourne, on being the only big city in Australia that's currently not in lockdown. Hobart, I see you too. Really, really delighted to have all of you here today, and I hope that you have a marvelous day together. To state the obvious, the world has gone through major disruptions recently, and we've witnessed their impact on all parts of society: health, well-being, education, multilateral partnerships, and economic stability. None of these things operates in isolation. As I've often said, the most urgent questions coming out of the pandemic have been anything but narrowly medical. We've seen the need to rethink sustainability, development practices, response and recovery, collaboration and partnerships, and crucially, underneath and running through all of these, climate change adaptation. Students, as the young and upcoming generation of development professionals, you have a great role in shaping the future of sustainable development across the world in ways that will allow us to adapt to current and emerging circumstances and to anticipate upcoming challenges. That's what today's about. The new normal post-disruptions will also require young professionals to equip themselves with the skills and knowledge to work across borders, to connect with communities and collaborate locally while thinking globally. You are the people who will find pathways through disruption, as the conference is entitled. The Student Forum provides attendees the opportunity to engage with speakers to gain insight on working in the aid and development sector. Through a panel with the Australian Council for International Development, it allows you to explore career aspirations and get to know networks that nurture young professionals working in international development, such as Oaktree and the Crawford Fund. Attendees will also have the valuable opportunity to build some skills through workshops on design thinking and pitching in with the UQ Ventures team, which is, in addition to being professionally helpful, just a whole lot of fun. Participants also get to engage with Linton, Australia's leading young climate activists, on climate change, activism, youth leadership, and the future. From what I've seen, you have a terrific day ahead of you, and I wish you every good experience. I do want to take a moment to thank the UQ organizers, Vaishnavi Nair, Eugene Sosing, Hannah Makananti, Akanksha Pukhan, and Tianyi Zhang. I know that this has been an awful lot of work to pull together. Congratulations, you've made it, you're here. And on behalf of that whole organizing committee and everyone at the University of Queensland, I hope that you find the day insightful. I hope you find it helpful for your future career working in aid and international development. My best wishes for you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Zwicker. Before we start off, I would like to acknowledge a few of our sponsors and thank them for their support. We have our gold sponsor, the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research, our silver sponsors, Australian Council for International Development, ASCII Developers and Crawford Fund, and our bronze sponsors, James Cook University, University of Technology, Sydney's Institute of Sustainable Futures, International Development Contractors Community, Institute for Global Development, University of New South Wales, Burnett Institute, Institute for Human Security and Social Change, La Trobe University, and Development Policy Center, Australian National University. For the attendees, I shall run through a few logistics for the HUVA, so it's easier for everyone to get onto sessions that they would like to attend. For accessing the sessions, you click on the relevant session you want to join on HUVA agenda, web app or mobile app. You can join sessions via Zoom or HUVA. Just choose one of the two options as they display for the session. All sessions will have live captions. If you are utilizing the mobile HUVA app, captions will display automatically. If you are utilizing the HUVA web app or Zoom, please click on the live transcript button at the bottom of the session window and select your transcript option accordingly. HUVA as our conference platform, is our conference platform, as it is a screen reader accessible via the mobile app and is designed to be accessible for low bandwidth connections as well. As for recording, all sessions except the breakout rooms will be recorded, and delegates can access the recording up to 6 months after the conference in case you want to watch other sessions you missed during the student forum. The conference is on a tight schedule. The tech facilitator will prompt the chairs, the moderators, or the MCs of each session when each section approaches scheduled finish time. At finish time, the session will end automatically. Please share your moments and thoughts on the HUVA app and on social media by using the conference hashtags, hashtag 2021 RDI conference, hashtag UQ, hashtag RDI network, and hashtag pathways through disruptions. If you have any other questions or need further help, please go to the community board section of Ask Organizers Anything and post your question there. Alternatively, you can message us on our live support via WhatsApp, that is +61 404 338643. Our first speaker for today, we have Nathan Linton. Nathan is currently the head of international engagement at Oaktree, Australia's largest youth-led international development organization, and sits on the board of Concern Australia, an organization that works with vulnerable young people to give them hope for a successful and positive life. Nathan previously worked in the youth team at the Country Fire Authority, compiled a research internship for completed a research internship with Oxfam Australia, looking at developing micro desalination technology for off-grid settings in rural areas of Bangladesh, has volunteered with Tear Fund Australia, and also served on the Yarra Ranges Council Youth Reference Group. Nathan has a Bachelor of Arts and Masters of International Development Practice from Monash University. And do we have Nathan here? There.
Yeah, I'm on.
We do.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much, Vaishnavi, for that really lovely introduction. And thanks everyone for having me. I'm incredibly excited to be here. Just give me a moment while I figure out my technology and get this presentation up, and I won't be too long. Sorry, is everyone there able to see my presentation?
Nathan, it's showing up embedded within the Chrome window, not full screen.
I beg your pardon. Interesting.
If you've got more than one screen going, unplug the other screen, and that should work.
Is that better?
That's perfect.
All right, give me 1 second while I get up my notes on my laptop. I'm very sorry. Give me one moment. The joys of laptops. All right. Well, while I get everything started, I'll start with a little bit of a conversation about who Oaktree is and a little bit about my role. So I've just recently started as the head of international engagement at Oaktree, which is Australia's largest international development, youth-led international development organisation. So everyone at Oaktree is under the age of 27, whether you are a volunteer or whether you are a staff member, that is everyone. We have an advisory board, which is made up of people that are above that age. However, 1/3 of us need to be under the age of 27. We have over 200,000 supporters, and our vision is that we want to see a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. And our mission is young people leading, demanding, and creating a more just world. So one of the big changes that we've seen at Oaktree over a number of years is traditionally we've had a focus on education. And that's been a really great programming focus for us for a really long time. However, a few years ago, we were starting to have conversations about how young people weren't as embedded in the development processes that we were doing, and thought as young people that was a real area of leadership that we wanted to engage in. So we went through a really big shift and decided that, that there were lots of really great NGOs that were already working and doing great work in the field of education. We felt that youth participation and youth empowerment was the real place that we needed to go to. Now, if you give me one moment, I will just get up my notes. Please excuse me. I'm going to get started properly. Okay. So at Oaktree, we believe that young people are capable of leading, demanding, and creating a more just world. So we're advocating for increased youth participation and youth mainstreaming in the development sector. The inclusion of youth perspectives is not merely an optional undertaking for us, it is a prerequisite for inclusive and sustainable and effective development. So why young people and why youth leadership? We're living in a world where over half of the global population is under the age of 30, and where 9 out of 10 young people live in underdeveloped countries. To ignore the impact that development initiatives have on young people is short-sighted, and to ignore the participatory potential of young people in informing development work is short-sighted. Who better to help improve development outcomes than those experiencing the challenges of poverty, resource scarcity, and disempowerment firsthand? In an industry and an environment already inundated with countless other priorities, why are we calling on the sector to dedicate the time and resources to young people? The answer is simple. As our world changes and adapts to new geopolitical, security, and environmental and demographic conditions, so too must our approach to development. The existential threat of the climate crisis, the devastating economic impact of COVID-19. The reality is that young people often bear the brunt of these challenges. And if we can recognise that, then adopting a youth focus to resolve the world's most pressing issues is only logical and prudent. Whilst many may see the growing youth demographic and their circumstances as a major challenge, we at Oaktree see this as a defining moment for change in global development. And if others aren't willing to step up and lead with the courage the situation demands, then we as young people must stand up and lead in their place. We had a real watershed moment at Oaktree in 2016, where we jointly published with the Australian Council for International Development a practice note on youth participation in development, where we really defined what the problem was and did a lot of research and statistics behind that to inform our work, and put forward a range of case studies where youth participation was being demonstrated in development. I've got a QR code there that you can access that. That's a free resource that is up online on the ACVID website and Oaktree websites as well. This practice note informed everything that we have started to do in the past 5 years since we published that practice note on how we can include young people in development processes. There are 3 main areas that I'm going to talk to you about today, about how we can make sure that young people are leaders in aid and development. The first one is organisational governance. The second one will be how young people can participate in the program and project cycles. And the third one will be how young people can be involved in policy and planning. So for our first one, youth participation in organisational governance. Organisational governance is the distribution of responsibilities, processes for decision-making, and mechanisms for accountability for the sustainable operations of an organisation. Accessing the unique perspectives, knowledge, and skills that young people have to offer leads to better organisational decision-making. By better identifying and understanding the needs of young people, organisations can develop more effective policies and procedures around these issues. I'd like to talk to you a bit about a case study about where young people have been embedded into the organisational structures of the United Nations through their United Nations Youth Strategy. The United Nations Youth Strategy was published in 2018 and outlines the steps to mainstream young people across the wider working bodies of the United Nations. They include, among other things, creating a youth focal point in each function and in each UN country team and mission to support system-wide and country-level coordination on youth. In the strategy, they established youth engagement platforms such as youth advisory boards within relevant UN entities to provide a channel for input and feedback from young people on UN work. It provided orientation briefings on youth issues to the United Nations entity representatives, resident coordinators, and senior management positions to build capacity of staff to understand and address youth needs. By building knowledge bases and platforms for dialogue, the youth strategy is able to comprehensively mainstream youth voices throughout its organisation, with better representation leading to more effective decision-making on a wide range of issues. Another key area about why it's important to have youth participating in organisational governance, especially in the development sector, is that research has shown that diverse voices often lead to better decisions. And considering that children and young people are a focus for many development organisations, not having their voice in key organisational decision-making processes would lead that organisation to a real detriment and remove that key diversity voice that is required to have better development outcomes. The next area I want to talk about is youth participation in the program or project cycle. For too long, young people have been merely seen as the beneficiaries of development programs rather than as a primary source. Young people are not often granted opportunities to take responsibility for seeing through project activities that impact the lives of others. It is incredibly empowering for young people to see their ideas and efforts translated into action. Young people can participate in a range of activities, including facilitation or demonstrative activities, administrative or assistant roles, consultants, peer educators, or community liaison officers, just to name a few. There are countless opportunities for young people to participate in development projects, and they should be engaged to share their own creative ideas on how they can best lead and assist. Youth participation can occur in all parts of the program or project cycle, including research and analysis, program or project design, program and project implementation, and in monitoring and evaluation. I'd like to share with you a key case study that we have here at Oaktree on how we've embedded youth participation in the program and project cycle. One of our current partners that we're working with is called CAPE. And CAPE, we'd worked with them before on a range of different education programs that were highly successful. A lot of these young people ended up going to university and getting jobs primarily in non-pen, and came back to CAPE and said, we would love to be able to give back for all that we received from this organisation and help other young people succeed. So CAPE came to us with an idea for KELA, which we affectionately call it, or the Campuchian Young Leaders Action. What this was a group of alumni from previous CAPE, young alumni from previous CAPE programs. And what they did is they created a secretariat and decided to go into schools and work out what young people needed. So they found out that young people were really keen to understand how they can better participate in society, as well as how they can improve their schools and learn soft skills such as interview skills and leadership. So what KELA did is they came back to us and they presented their own project plans, which we approved with barely any alteration. We provided them the funding and capacity building and resource support to be able to roll out these programs in the target high schools. KELA has since grown and has had worked from strength to strength over about 3 years, to the point where now KELA and the young people that run it are wanting to register them as a separate organisation. So what we've effectively done is helped KELA build their skills in research and resourcing, in project development, as well as monitoring and evaluation, which we're currently doing a case study on through remote youth-led evaluation techniques. KELA is a great example where young people have been able to lead in every single part of the development process, but we've served as much more of a support and capacity building role rather than the traditional donor beneficiary model. The next one is youth participation in policy and planning. Young people make up the majority of most developing nations' populations. As a result, development issues often disproportionately affect young people. Young people are best able to convey the ever-evolving nuances of the issues they face every day. Young people bring value to policy development processes with the unique skills, experiences, and perspectives on a wide range of issues. Young people face the brunt of urgent development issues, such as unemployment, following economic downturns, and sexual health issues such as HIV/AIDS. As such, they have valuable on-the-ground experience through which to inform policy and decision makers. Key barriers to the participation of young people in the policy-making process include prevailing views of young people and their status within society. They're often not viewed as equal partners in public and private domains. And there are often historical and structural factors that discourage young people from engaging in civic life. Hart's ladder of youth participation provides a framework to ensure that engagement with young people is appropriate and meaningful. It focuses on the level of influence for young people participating in engagement processes. And whilst each context will default to different levels of youth participation in decision-making, development organisations and practitioners can use a wide range of platforms to engage with young people in their work. These include forming a youth council or an ad hoc youth committee, conducting a youth audit, running a youth forum or a focus group, having direct or indirect, depending on the circumstances, consultation with young people, or simply asking them to complete a survey or draw a picture of their experience will help make sure the voice of young people is heard when making key policy and planning decisions. A case study is in India's Right to Information Act. The Right to Information Act was passed in India in 2005 to uphold the Indian government's commitment to transparency and accountability, as well as to encourage public participation in governance. The Act gives citizens the right to request and receive information on any government program, including its processes, spending, and outcomes, and has been recognised by the Supreme Court of India as an integral part of the right to the freedom of speech in the country. The YP Foundation, a youth-based organisation in India, played a key role in disseminating information about the RTI to young people in India and trained them on its potential application in their lives. Through these initiatives, young people across India have been exercising the right granted through the Act, actively seeking out information pertaining to government processes and programs that affect them. In one estimate, the RTI has been overtaken by young people, with young people using the Act to seek further transparency and accountability from their government. Whilst we believe that youth participation in international aid and development is a key priority, especially considering the demographic challenges that the world is facing, there are a number of key issues which we've come across and key challenges that we're trying to work through and overcome. The first one is public support or a lack thereof. International aid and development itself, in terms of public support, has fallen over, especially in the Western world, over the past few years, and this has been incredibly prevalent within Australia. It's hard enough to get people to understand why aid and development needs to be a key priority, let alone why including young people in our development processes, policies, and procedures is a real priority. With that, it's really difficult to demonstrate grassroots support for an initiative which is quite technical and focused on development processes and procedures. This leads to a lack of political appetite, considering that there isn't a large grassroots swell on this issue or advocacy, and also considering our current political climate of debts and deficits, where aid is likely to be deprioritised. We're going to be facing a number of key challenges in realising how youth participation can be mainstreamed within the sector. Another key challenge is sector appetite. In Australia, in our international development policies and processes, gender, disability, and children are often prioritised, whereas youth are deprioritised. We often see in the sector at the moment that the COVID disruption is the primary focus, and just understanding how we can continue programming is the biggest area that international development organisations are trying to overcome. Another key barrier is that partnership relationships are often focused on compliance, and there is financial incentive for this to be so. At Oaktree, rather than talking about a traditional donor-beneficiary relationship, we're doing our very best to shift that to a youth solidarity model. So our job, we see, is to stand in solidarity with other young people and youth movements across the Asia-Pacific region. We've made some pretty tough decisions at our organisation not to pursue some of the more high compliance accreditations that we could have got and received money for that, so that we can try and maintain a really high level of youth participation within our programming, and to make sure we can get better outcomes through project activities rather than focusing on those compliance areas that many other organisations do. Another key challenge is that youth don't sell. And obviously money is a really, really big thing that international development organisations need to continue their operations. And often organisations will claim they're being quite pragmatic in the way that they then try and market their programming. Just look at child sponsorship, for example. That is a major source of revenue for a range of different organisations. People often see children and see them as a key development priority, whereas youth do not sell in the same way, as what children do. And that's really unfortunate, but an unfortunate reality of the current funding climate for international development. I mentioned earlier on in this presentation that Oaktree had published a paper on the youth bulge with ACFID on youth participation in international development. We're now taking this to a next step, but we want to give a real practical guide to development practitioners on how they can embed these processes and procedures across organizational governance, program cycles, and in policy and planning. So we're going to be launching this document on the 12th of August on International Youth Day here in Melbourne, and also looking at how we can have online functionality with that as well. So what I've put there is a QR code where you can register for that event. And what we'll be providing you at that event is access to some of the greatest minds in youth participation in international development within the region, as well as a copy of our practical guide on how to embed youth participation in international development. As part of this, we'll also be launching our pledge for development practitioners to embed youth participation in international development. And you can receive more information from that if you register using the QR code below. Key takeaways that I would like you all to take. We often talk about participatory development as being the key to the way in which we do development programming, especially in NGOs. And unfortunately, as I've tried to demonstrate, that is not always the case. So one takeaway I would love you all to take away is that effective development is inclusive development, whether that's with women, whether that is with children, or whether that is with young people. Effective development is inclusive development. The other one is put the people closest to the pain, closest to the power. If you've identified that young people are the people who are not receiving the resources or information that they need, make sure that they are key to solving that issue. So put the people closest to the pain, closest to the power. And another thing, I was speaking with the CEO of another large international development organization last week, and she gave me some great insight that I wanted to share with you all. She said that system change requires 4 things. And that's critiquing, dismantling, building, and planning. The international development sector is a sector of activists who are really great at the first 2, critiquing and dismantling. And they are essential to changing systems to make sure that the world is a more fair and equitable place. But what I would like you to do is dare to do the last 2, to build and plan, because that is how we can build new systems to replace the current ones that we have to ensure more equitable development outcomes for everyone, particularly young people. That's the end of my formal presentation. There's some details there. If you would ever like to get in contact with me, please send me an email, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to have a coffee and chat to you about what we do here at Oaktree, how we're trying to do things differently, connect you with other practitioners and people within the sector, so that you can help walk on this journey of making sure that young people are leaders in aid and development processes. I'm more than happy to open up to questions or any comments. I'd just like to apologise for the blank at the start while I was trying to get up my notes on my other laptop. So thank you.
We do have a question for you, Nathan.
Sure.
It is, what are the key challenges that large organizations face when implementing youth governance structures? Yep.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question in youth governance structures. So one of the key things is that a lot of institutions don't actually have an understanding of how to incorporate young people into it. So I was in a meeting with an organization who's looking at doing this much more. And the key thing that kept on coming through in that meeting that they kept on emphasizing is that young people don't have experience, that they wouldn't want to embed a young person in their board. This was the conversation because of their lack of experience and their need for extensive training. And I challenged that and I pushed back on that. I myself sit on the board of an organisation called Concern Australia, and I was put on there as a youth voice. And what they've done is we initially started as observers in that forum for a year to understand how a board works and what that looks like. We were paired with a mentor within the organisation, as well. And we're given some professional development on what it means to take on an organisational governance role. So through a 1-year dedicated program, I was trained and mentored to be able to step into that role and then take on the role as a director on those boards. So one, I think, is a false perception about the capability of young people and just the level of investment that might be required to embed young people in those processes and structures. And then that second one is just just a lack of understanding of the value that young people can bring to those. The biggest one will be the experience factor that people often see, but often that's something that can be bridged. I think that's probably one of the key areas of a perception that isn't always true.
Sorry, just before we move on to like the next question, could I please request everyone to put in their questions in the Q&A sector, which would be right next to the recording button at the bottom, or there should be one there. Are we ready for the next question, Nathan?
Yeah, no worries.
Awesome. Our next question is from Paul. He says, with the economic challenges facing the international development and aid sector that you mentioned, how would you recommend youth and young professionals market themselves to get their foot in the door?
That's a really tough question at the moment. At the moment, a lot of different organisations are rationalising their staff bases, which is making it increasingly challenging for a range of people, especially when experience is often seen as a prerequisite. One of the best things that can be done is volunteering, and I'm sure that's something that's often shared quite often. We're really fortunate at Oaktree that we can provide those volunteering opportunities and spaces for people under the age of 27. So I'd encourage you to check that out. A really good one is the UN volunteers place a whole range of different volunteering opportunities online, and that can sometimes be in-country volunteer placements, or it can be micro-volunteering online that you can do from the comfort of your own home. That can take 3 hours sometimes, or it can take 300 hours as well. So what I just encourage you to do is get involved at any point, whether it's as the fundraising officer, as a comms officer, and use whatever skill you have, either in a volunteer or work capacity. And then that can lead into further pathways into programming. So for example, myself and my journey, I was lucky that I studied international development. And while that tends to help, it's not necessarily a prerequisite. It's often about that specialization of those skills that you bring. I was volunteering at Oaktree in the community development area a couple of years ago while I was studying my master's, so not directly on programming, but gave me an exposure to the sector and I suppose a credibility in the space as well. And then obviously I was lucky enough to apply for this position and receive it. But that was not without that extra background work that I had done. The other key thing that I would recommend is find your specialization as well. So try and find out what you're really good at. What are you passionate about? Is it communications? Is it sanitation? Is it young people? Which is mine for an example. Before I was in this role, I was at the Country Fire Authority in the youth programs team, so very much in a community development role, but a lot of transferable skills that I could bring across. So find out whatever your passion is and your skill set is that you can offer to the development sector, and really try and, I suppose, market yourself, if we're using that term, as a specialist in one or two different areas.
We have a question from Lua. What are the motivations for youth to be engaged in ongoing development work?
Yeah, sure. I think it's quite difficult to answer because young people vary so much in their motivations, especially in different areas. In terms of the domestic sector, and say at an organisation like Oaktree, I'd say that there are two key reasons that young people would be involved. And that includes wanting to see a positive change or an impact. And then the second one is to build their own knowledge and skills and professional skills. I think what we're really lucky at Oaktree is we have an incredibly dedicated group of young people that want to see positive change in the world and want to see young people take on leadership roles and be empowered across the region. And then they see the skills and knowledge that they can develop, that professional development that happens along the way, as a real bonus in achieving that impact. So the two motivations from that perspective, I would say for actual people in country, it varies so wildly, and I hesitate to make generalizations, but I can give one example. So we're currently working on a project through our Youth Solidarity Fund called YLDP, or Young Leaders Development Program. And there was a young person from Timor who came to us and said that she wanted young people to receive leadership training all throughout Timor-Leste in high schools. And her big dream is that every young Timorese student would receive leadership skills, because that was something that she didn't have and she felt was really important. So we've worked with her, given her a bit of funding, a little bit of capacity building, and is now doing a pilot in various schools around Timor about giving leadership and skill training in those soft skills. So I think for her, the motivation for being involved in that ongoing development work in her country and in her context was seeing the lack of need that was there and wanting to do something about it. And I think that's a key motivator for a lot of people in country, that experience and wanting to help change and make things better for other people. That might be going into a sweeping generalization again, but I think that's probably covered the two different contexts.
We have a question from Suzanne, who says that you spoke very positively of the UN putting youth focal points into their offices and operations. She just wanted to know and hear more if there is a danger to make this a box-ticking exercise, as has happened in the past with gender focal points versus mainstreaming, as you mentioned, and perhaps how this can be avoided.
That is a great point. And yeah, we did use the UN example because there's actually not too many examples where youth mainstreaming has occurred on such a large global level. I think wanted to recognise the UN for at least trying to take that opportunity. But you're right, it can often be tokenistic. And one thing that our former CEO, Shani Kane, would always talk about is that she was often put into a youth space or into a panel as the youth representative. And youth are incredibly diverse with a range of different experiences that can never be represented within one person and would often fall to being tokenistic. So one thing that I would recommend at least everyone here to familiarise themselves with is Hart's ladder of participation. And what it does is it talks about the different levels of participation, from leadership to tokenism to consultation. And I think one thing I always talk to organisations and people about is you can identify where you are currently with engaging with young people. And while we would love for young people to take on leadership, or at least co-leadership roles, try and work on putting yourself one rung up that ladder to see how you can just at least slightly improve and make slightly more difference to see the value of your participation. I think another thing, and we're quite lucky at Oaktree in that all of us are young people. So by nature, we're embedding youth participation just across our entire structures. But we were taking one of our partners that we work with in Timor-Leste, which was more of a traditional education NGO. We were talking to them about our new theory of change. We wanted to put youth empowerment and participation as that primary driver to our development work. And they were really interested by it, even though they didn't have as much experience with it, and wanted to come along the journey with us on that. So we were, that was a couple of years ago now, and we've done a lot of work with them, and they've done a lot of work with us to help understand youth empowerment in the Timorese context. And what it's taken is a number of years through really great relationships and honest and open conversations that we've had. Investing in those relationships is incredibly important to help understand those things and make sure that they're ongoing. But a really great success that we've actually seen is we're currently working out how to do a remote evaluation of one of our projects, not being able to travel over to Timor. And we were just thinking of having a conversation with some of the staff, doing a bit of a midline evaluation and reviewing our partnership principles. However, our partner actually said, when we were coming into the meeting, that they didn't want to just do that, and that they wanted to contact a whole number of young people from within the programs so that they could present to us on what they'd received from the program and what they would like us to continue. And that was something that we weren't pushing, and it's something that we hadn't asked for. But with them having come along on that journey and building that relationship and that capacity building in themselves, is that they're now putting youth participation at the forefront of their development decisions. So that's just one minor example, but understanding that these changes won't happen overnight and that perhaps it might start with tokenism. Not that I'm an advocate for tokenism, but if tokenism is one step forward, then let's work out how we can then build from that over time to embed these as just the norm, as it has with our partner in Timor that we're really thrilled about.
Sorry. Yep. And we have a couple of questions. There's a question regarding how can youth with disabilities participate with planning and policy?
That is a fantastic question. And if I'm quite honest, that is an area that we have identified ourselves is something that we can grow in. There are some really, really great methodologies that are out there about how we can engage a whole group of young people. But one in particular is participatory rural appraisal. And that's something that we are using much more than we ever have. And it's something that we've found that young people, especially with mobility disadvantages, have been able to engage with much better. Another thing is that I think CBM, if I'm getting it right, are a real specialist in disability, especially within the Australian development context, and have a whole range of resources and freely available resources on how to make sure that young people with disability are better included in the development processes. So I'd probably encourage you to check out CBM resources because they have some really great ideas and years of experience, more so than what we have, of making sure that they're really included in the process. Sorry, I don't have much more on that one.
Then we have one from Whitney Yip. For young people that do not have the resource to volunteer, do you have any recommendations of organizations that are youth-friendly and will employ young people to give them that experience and momentum? Yep.
Sure. I can only really speak in the Australian context. I think one of the great things about the international development sector in Australia is that everyone is really lovely, and I haven't met anyone who hasn't entered this sector with a view to make the world a better place. And I think we're always told about participatory development and being inclusive and trying to break down those power structures. And I think that that's something that people try to naturally do every day. So I don't have a particular organization that I can recommend, but I think that I think it's one of the most radically inclusive spaces that I have found, whether you are, an LGBTQI person, whether you have mental health issues, whether you have a disability. I don't think there's a sector that is trying to advance these issues much more than what the international development sector is. There are some really great organizations that are really trying to lead in the youth space, especially that we've connected with, and that we're working with to improve policies and practices. A few that I could recommend would be the Australian Red Cross. That's one. We've done some work with them on making sure that their youth volunteering is really great. They've got a youth unit as well, doing some incredible work with young people, especially in regional Australia, the Red Cross. Oxfam Child Fund is another one I would recommend. And Tier Fund Australia, they've embedded young people in their board for a really long time now and are really dedicated to bringing that forward. So they're four that I can recommend at the start, but knowing that I've excluded too many.
Thank you. And then we have a question from Daniela, I think. Kim, she says, given the complex nature of the aid and development sector, how have you managed to keep up your own personal morale and keep up your own personal morale up and not lose sight of the work that you do?
Oh, what a great question. I'll speak to the first part first about the complexity of the sector, and I can't understate the complexity. And I think that often comes from funding sources. Unfortunately, you can often follow the money and find where the problem is. So as part of the sector, obviously money is the key to make it work. and to do our programming that enables that. And with that, there's a whole range of compliance criteria that must be met. And I think people can get drowned in reports and not see that work they're doing. At Oaktree, we've made a really deliberate decision. I think I was speaking about it earlier, not to pursue some of those paths so that we can actually do more innovative programming. So I was giving you the example beforehand of Whale DP in Timor as part of our Youth Solidarity Fund. In that, we've got a 3-tiered model. The first level is $5,000 to do a really cool project. And it's quite flexible. It's really dynamic. Activities can change really quickly, and we're totally cool with that as long as it can be justified. The reporting requirements for those organizations is less because of the small nature of their work, and they can graduate up to level 2 and level 3. So from $5,000 to $10,000 to $15,000. So it's a much smaller pool of money, but our ability to impact is quite large. And we can also put organizations on the path through that to independence and establishing themselves. So I've got an incredible team around me who likes to think really, really big and be really visionary, and to really work out how we can change what development looks like. And I think being surrounded by a group of people, for me, that are really wanting to try those new ideas and being okay if we don't succeed in an area and be really innovative has really kept my energy up, because I think we're doing such exciting work. So many people in the sector keep on telling us we wish we could do the work that you're doing. So being in an environment that embraces change makes it really fast paced and different. And we're facing challenges that us and many others in the sector haven't before. And that makes it really fun, really challenging. But keeps me coming to work every day excited by what we can do in this next, 10 years in development.
Well, thank you so much, Nathan, for being part of the conference, and thank you for providing your time to us this morning. I apologize for everyone else who've asked questions and I was unable to really get Nathan to comment on it, but we've run out of time. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone could direct themselves to the Hoover webpage, the agenda section for the next session. Yeah, thank you so much, and hope to see you.
No worries. I was going to say, if someone did have questions, you're welcome to send me an email at n.linton@oaktree.org, and I'm happy to answer it through that method as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Have a great rest of the conference.